Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third week of Sensory Fitness. My name is Marcy, and I'm an occupational therapy student here. Okay. Okay, we're going to start over again because I don't know what's happening with the computer. Okay, so hello, everyone, and welcome to the third week of Sensory Fitness. We're glad you joined us today. My name is Marcy, and I am an occupational therapy intern here at the HIR Wellness Institute.
And I'm Sarah. I'm also an occupational therapy intern here at HIR Wellness Institute, and we're both from Mount Mary University.
You might have some questions about what occupational therapy is and how it is related to sensory fitness. Well, occupational therapists help people in any skill or activity that occupies their time. That's everything we do, and it takes a whole body approach. So that is why we start with sensory fitness. Right now, during COVID, it has caused some major disruptions, especially this past week. COVID has started to increase in Wisconsin here. So our engines might be in a little bit of higher gear right now. So this is a really good time to do some sensory fitness and we'll teach you some tools on how to bring your engine back into that just right gear. So let's get started with our sensory fitness today.
So last week we talked about creating some sensory tools that we could make around with things from around our house that we could put into our sensory space that we created our first couple weeks. And so we showed you how to make a rice pillow, a find it tube, sensory bottle, and we also showed you how you could use an old sheet or blanket to do burrito rolls or tug of war, which are all great activities to help us get our engine back to that just right state. So, with everything going on, Marcy, were you able to use any of the sensory tools we created to kind of help you bring your engine back to just right? I know a lot has been going on this week, just in general. So, were you able to use any of those things?
Yes, I was able to use some of the things we made last week. My favorite was the slow moving sensory bottle that we made, and I used it over the week whenever I felt a little anxious or I was worried about something or I just needed to take that little sensory break and I could just focus on the slow moving beads in the bottle, help me calm my sensory system, bring me into that just right gear. So what did you do, relatives? Did you use any of the things we used last week to help bring yourself into that just right gear? We'd love to hear from you. Put your comments down below.
Thank you, Marcy. That's a great idea to use that tool whenever you're feeling a little like this guy on the high side here. Or even when you're feeling a little low, that tool can be helpful if you use it in a different way. So, today's session, we are going to focus on how we can use music and rhythm to help us shift our gears. But first, let's review our favorite chart here, our favorite speedometer that helps us give us a visual of maybe how we could be feeling. So sometimes our engines are running too high, which may look like you have tense posture, you could be fidgeting, you could have poor self control, and it may even look like your child taking something away that their siblings are playing with. Okay, and then sometimes when our engines are too low, we may look or feel sad, discouraged, we may have slouchy posture, maybe we're lethargic or we have a lack of interest in activities, and we may even hide or fade into the background. So, we want to give you guys tips and tricks to get you back here to that just right zone, that just right gear, so that we can function our best and be able to participate in the activities that we want to participate in.
So now that we reviewed information about our engines and how our engines are running, we're going to go into what we're talking about today, which is music and rhythm. So you may not have ever thought of music being a support, but I would like you to remember a time when you either went into a restaurant or a store and there was music being played in the background. And was it alerting? Was it music that you enjoyed, or was it something that you really did not like? And how did that make you feel when you're in that situation? If it was music that you disliked, you probably did not stay in that store very long. You probably just left because it was agitating towards your sensory system. But if it was some type of music that you really liked and really enjoyed, you probably stayed in that store longer, but you might not even have realized that the music was why you stayed in that store longer. So, and rhythm is also a big part of music. There's rhythm in all of our lives. It's our heartbeat is a rhythm, the clock's ticking is a rhythm. There's so much things in our environment that help us establish a rhythm in our bodies. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Some people have difficulty learning about the rhythm in their own body and sensing that rhythm, which then corresponds to them having a harder time in the environment in certain type of rhythms that they find in the environment. This is where music can help if you're having troubles finding the rhythm in your own body. Musical selections can be chosen to match the rhythms of music to the rhythms of regulation, movement, and attention. This will help someone become more in tune with their own body, and then they will be more engaged in their environment.
So, Marcy, why are we spending so much time on sound and music? I know you gave us a little preview, but what else about sound and music is helpful to us?
So, you might not have known, but sound actually is connected throughout the entire body. The ears and the auditory nerve is connected to all of our muscles in our body. So the things we hear can correspond to things such as muscle tone, which is kind of like posture. So you can see if someone's really slouching over or if they're really tense and rigid. Sound can actually influence how their body posture looks. Balance can also be affected by your hearing and your auditory processing. Another thing that can be affected is your flexibility. That can be affected through sound. So, you might also have not known that rhythm and sound play a part in reading and spelling. So, people, when during school, when they're listening to their teacher, they're hearing speech and stuff like that, there's actually rhythm to that speech. And if someone's not in tune with that rhythm, they have a hard time processing that rhythm. They are more likely to have reading difficulties. They may have dyslexia. They may have some more challenges with reading. But if they do, you can go back to that rhythm, go back to music and see if they have trouble in that. That can, using the music and the rhythm, can actually help with the reading and the spelling because speech has a certain rhythm. So now that we've learned a little bit about rhythm in music, we are going to do pace, which we've been doing for the past 2 weeks. But actually, pace does have a rhythm to it and can help you find and tune in to your own rhythm in your body. So we're going to do pace. So our first thing we're going to do is we are going to take a measure of how our body's feeling right now. So we're going to bend over and touch our toes. And we're just going to park that thought for now. We'll come back to it at the end and see how we're doing. So our first thing we do with pace is we take a drink of water because that increases the electricity in the body. Okay, now we are going to do brain buttons. So we're going to put one hand on our chest, one hand on our belly, and we're just going to sit here. We can close our eyes, and we're just going to breathe. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. We're going to take our right hand to our left knee and our left hand to our right knee. I'm going to do a couple repetitions of this, helping cross the midline. Okay, on to the next. We're going to cross our legs, put our palms out in front of us. One hand goes over the other. Clasp your fingers and twist into your body. And we're just going to sit here, maybe close our eyes. Okay, you can untwist. We're going to put our fingertips together. And that was pace. So, we've been doing this each week, and this helps boost brain power and your ability to focus and pay attention, but it also helps with rhythm. See, when we're doing the brain buttons, we're focusing on the rhythm in our body, feeling that. And this is something that can be done every day when you need that little help feeling your rhythm and getting you into that just right gear. So, now that we've done pace and we've kind of regulated our bodies, we're ready to go into our activities that we're going to do today. So our first activity is a rain stick. We're going to make a rain stick that we can use to help with regulation. So I have a plastic bottle. You can use any type of bottle you want. And we're going to cut up a bunch of straws. And you can get these straws from anywhere. Some of these straws are from like fast food places that I collected some of them. So we're going to cut up the straws so that they fit into the bottle. They can be different sizes too of the straws, because that'll give different sound as the rice. We're putting rice in it. So this one's a little bigger tube, so it's going to make a little different sound than the smaller ones will. We're going to fill up the bottle with these, kind of putting them in different directions too, not all in the same direction.
You could even use thin sticks from outside if you don't
Oh,
want to
that's
use
right.
straws. And that could be a fun little scavenger hunt. You can see how quickly you can collect your sticks from outside and where you get them from. Maybe go for a walk and collect them on your walk.
Yeah, you can do a whole bunch of stuff. Just experiment with what you think you would like. So, almost done. I've got 2 more straws here that we can use. So we have our straws all situated in our little container here. So now we have our bag of rice, and the rice that we used last week for our rice sock and our find it tube, we're also going to use for this. And then you're just going to pour this in here. Hopefully I don't spill it. Maybe a little more. That should be good. And then you're going to close the cap. Or you could tape it or something like that so that all the rice doesn't come out. And then it makes kind of a rain stick. So then how you would use this with the child who's in high gear is if they're really high in high gear, they're running around the house, you need them to calm down. You can hold it with them and kind of move it real slowly to one side and then move it real slowly to the other side. And this is helping them focus on the sound of the rice, kind of bringing that engine back down into just right gear. What could you do, Sarah, if someone was in low gear?
So if they're in lower gear, we can use the same tool, but we just shake, 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 shake. You want it to be quicker than you would with when we're in high gear. So when we're in low gear, we want it to be quick. When we're in high gear, we want it to be slower, more controlled. But when we're in the lower gear, we want to alert whoever. And that's why we want it quicker, maybe louder. You can even bang it. Whatever you think would be the most fun for you and your child to do. There's no right or wrong. It's whatever works for your child. And even if you don't want to make a whole new rice tube sort of thing, you can go back from last week and use our Find It tube. It has the same sort of stuff inside, and it'll give it the same sound. But the rain stick is a little louder, and it kind of gives a longer, drawn out sound.
So that's our rain stick activity. So now we're going to move on to our drumming activity.
So drumming is a great way to shift from either the higher gear to just right or the low gear to just right. So this one's super simple. We all have these laying around the house. They're paper towel tubes, right? Here you go, Marcy. So for this, you're gonna you could hit it on a table and it creates that sound. You can get a milk jug if you want a louder sound, or you could do a couch cushion to give it a more muffled sound. So you really just want to play with the different sort of things that you hit it on, and it'll all produce a different sound. So you're going to just see what works best for you and your child. But the key is to have the caregiver start a rhythm and have the child follow it. Remember, we want to focus on rhythm. And if the child is in low gear, maybe a faster rhythm. You gotta follow along. And if they're in higher gear, we want to bring them back to just right, maybe a slower rhythm.
You want to make sure to focus on that rhythm. This can be done while you're playing a song, some type of music. Make sure the adult is working with the child and having the child follow what the rhythm the adult is doing, or what the rhythm the music is doing. Because otherwise, if they could just take these and bang them around everywhere, and that might make them go even into higher gear.
Yes.
So make it controlled so that the child can start to learn that rhythm in their environment, which then can help them understand the rhythm in their body.
Mm-hmm. And you could just give this to them and say, all right, today we're going to do some drumming. And they might go crazy, like Marcy was saying, and that's when you want them to be able to explore that, but then you as the caregiver want to use some co-regulation and bring it either back down if they are in that high gear, or bring it up if they're in that lower gear.
Okay, so we finished our drumming activity. So now we're going to play you some different songs that we found to help either alert a child or to help calm them down. So generally speaking, songs that are more higher tempo, things like that, can help alert the child, and songs that are slower, have a slow tempo tend to bring a child from higher gear to lower gear. But sometimes you can use music with words or without words. So we're going to show you some music that has words. This song is called Jello from Jen Jareb. You can find it on YouTube, and we will have it linked in the description or in the comments. And we're going to show you this song has words in it, and what you want your child to do is do the actions with it too. So they have some different actions that can go with the words, and the child can make up these fun, silly actions that they do while they're listening to the music. So this can help your child get into that just right gear. So we're going to listen to the music, do some actions, and then we'll explain a little more about the song.
Okay, here we go.
Made a bowl of Jello. Made a bowl of Jello. Poured in the powder, yeah. Made a bowl of Jello. Poured in the water. Made a bowl of Jello. Now I got Jello in my mouth. Jello in my mouth. Ooh, jiggle with Jello in my
that was just a little sample of what you can do. And even say your child is in lower gear, you could have them on your lap, just like I have George here with us, and you can do those actions right on top of their arms. Kind of shake, shake, shake. Get it off your arms, pour the water in, pour the powder in, stir it up. Just whatever you think your child needs at that time, or you can be sitting next to them and do it that way too, or standing up, even better. Dancing around. It's a great way to get them back into that just right gear.
So if they were in a high gear, you can use this to help them kind of match their gear. So if they're in a high gear and they're doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, this can actually help them use some of that energy to do those motions and stuff like that. It concentrates their energy onto something that's useful, and then eventually that'll help bring their gears back down to that just right spot. So this one's not necessarily just for a child that's in low gear to bring him into just right, but if you have a child that's in high gear, you can help them channel all that energy that they have into doing these certain motions. And you can have them make up their own little crazy motions to any type of song. It doesn't have to be just this song. Any song, make these big crazy motions to help bring them into that just right gear.
We all know Baby Shark, right, Marcy? That
Yep, we
good
know
song,
Baby Shark.
Baby Shark. They have the same thing. They start with the smaller motions and then they go
Then-
into those big, gross movements that really get the whole body excited and ready to go, or you meet the body where it is at with its energy level.
So Baby Shark is another option, another song you can use to help regulate and get into that just right gear.
Yeah.
So now we're going to show you, you're going to listen to a slower song. This song is more calming to get that from high gear down to that low gear. This can be used at bedtime, or maybe during like a transition where it's really chaotic in the house or something like that. You put this on to help regulate that system and bring it down into that just right gear. So let's take a listen.
And this one is called Sweet Dreams by Super Simple Songs. You can search them on YouTube as well. They have a bunch of nursery rhymes and lullabies that could be helpful.
Good night to you. Good night to me. Now close your eyes and go to sleep. Good night, sleep tight, sweet dreams tonight.
So that's an example of a slower song that you can use to bring your child from high gear into that just right gear. If your child's really in low gear, I probably would not use this slow of a song, because that might keep them in that low gear and that might push them even lower. So this is a good song for bedtime, something like that, where the child needs to get ready for sleep, needs to just relax and get into that just right gear. So all the music that we had you listen to today had words in it, which is good for helping with regulation. But instrumental music is also very good for when you just kind of need some background music to kind of help fill the space. If you're like doing homework and stuff like that, you're gonna want more instrumental music with with no words, because that'll just help the sensory system regulate and stay regulated while it's listening to the music. So that's another option.
And we have one more fun activity that we're going to show you today.
So
it's going to include getting up and stretching your legs, and we need a couple
moving around.
Objects. Yep.
So we're going to do what is called ball of physics, which stands for balance, auditory vision exercises. So ball of physics uses racket balls and bean bags to help with rhythm in the body and helping you connect with somebody else and create that rhythm that some people might not be connected to. It helps with focus and concentration, where you have to focus and concentrate on these exercises. So this is very beneficial to kids that need a little help in school, need that little extra something different to do in school besides just sitting around doing their Zoom school or doing their homework. They need to get around and move and stuff like that. It really helps integrate both sides of the body and get the brain really in that just right place. So we're going to do the bean bags first. Let's just sit. So we're going to sit for this one, but you can also do it standing. So we're each going to have a bean bag, and we're going to throw it up. We're going to throw it up in the air, catch it, and then clap it. And what you want to do is you want to match. So someone's going to be like the leader. So I'll be the leader, and Sarah's going to match my rhythm of the bean bags. And you want your rhythms to stay in sync. So, ready?
Yes.
And you can go faster or slower with this and have the other person try and match how fast you're going. You can also say stop and switch hands. So then you'll switch whichever hand you're throwing it with.
Yes, so you're throwing it from one hand up in the air to the other hand and then clapping.
Yep. You want to make sure you can hear the beanbag slap on your hands and clap it together, because that's the rhythm. That's how your auditory processing, that's going to help that, so that you can recognize rhythm in your environment, so then you're able to recognize it in yourself.
And if you notice at the beginning, me and Marcy were not in sync. It took a couple tries to finally get into that sync mode. But once we did, you kind of feel a difference in your body. You feel very focused and ready and just calm and attentive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so our next exercise with the bean bags is we're each going to have one bean bag in our right hand, and we're going to slap it in each other's hand, and then you're going to clap it together. So you're going to slap it, clap it. And then we want to stay in sync with each other. And you can speed it up. And you can say switch.
Uh-oh, okay. So now it's in our left hand.
Yep.
Okay.
And we're going to slap it.
When you switch sides, it might take a second or two to really use that brain power.
Yep, that's
and
using that brain power and switching it. Yeah. That's helping you with focus. You really have to focus on what you're doing. Make sure we're staying in rhythm. Then you can say switch again, so then you could switch, you could keep switching it, and that's helping you. Then you have to tune in to the sound of the beanbag. You have to tune into the other person saying switch, so that your auditory processing is picking that up, so that then it's going to help increase your ability to process that information. So that's what we have with the bean bags. So now we're going to move over to the balls. Hang on 1 second while we adjust the camera and the microphone. Okay. So We each have our first ball exercises. We each have one racquetball, and what we're going to do is we're going to bounce it, catch it in our opposite hand, and then clap it together. We're going to do the same thing like we did with the bean bags when we were throwing it up, but instead we're bouncing it on the ground. We're going to try and stay in rhythm with each other.
Okay.
So I'm going to be the leader. I'm going to bounce it, and Sarah's going to try and bounce with me at the same time. So we're bouncing it with one hand, catching it with the opposite hand, and then clapping it together. Then you can also say switch, and then you can switch whichever hand you're dropping it with. So we'll switch. So that's a good one to do before school or before some activity that your kids want to do. That'll help increase their focus and their concentration. That will also help with auditory processing because you're hearing the bounce and the clap of the ball. You're sensing that rhythm in your environment. So we're going to do another partner one with the racket balls. So we're going to hold the ball in our right hand, and then you're going to bounce pass it to the other person. They're going to catch it in their opposite hand and then clap it together.
Here
Okay.
we go.
Ready? And you could also say switch, and you'd switch whichever hand. So now we're going to throw with our left hand. That's just another way of how to use the balls with a partner. So those are kind of more of the simple, easier to do ones. Any kid can do these. Younger kids can do them, 2, 4, 5, 6-year-olds. But then once you kind of master these, some of the older kids are going to get maybe a little bored with some of these simple ball exercises. So they do have, Ballistics has some more complex ball skills, and I'll show you some of them. So this one is the simultaneous bounce. So I'm going to bounce the two balls at the same time, and then I'm going to use one hand and continually bounce them. So I'll show you how this one works. So I'm using one hand, and I'm bouncing them at the same time.
Yes, the goal is for them to hit the floor about the same time to get that rhythm.
Yep. This one is really good for crossing the midline. So if you saw, my hand was going one side then the other, and crossing the midline of the body helps integrating both sides of the brain, making brain processing faster. So the simultaneous bounce is for some of the older kids who want a little more of a challenge. And then I also have learned the 3-ball bounce, where you bounce 3 balls and they move between each of your hands. It's almost like juggling with the ground. So instead of juggling up in the air, I'm juggling with the ground. So I'll show you the 3-ball bounce. So the balls are actually moving between my left and my right hand. So that's another one that some of the older kids can learn about. There are videos on the Ballistics website, which we will have linked in the comments, where you can watch these videos over and over again. It took me a while to learn how to do this, but if you keep watching those videos, you can learn how to do these more advanced skills. So that's it for, we'll talk a little more about the ball of physics. Hang on one sec. So what ball of physics is really doing is it's really focusing on the rhythm of the balls and the bouncing of the balls. So that helps with auditory processing. So when you have to match somebody else's rhythm, that then helps you learn that there are rhythms that we can match in our environment. And once we do that, then we're going to be more in tune with our own rhythm in our own body. So the ball of physics can be used when a child is doing schoolwork and just want to take a break, or they need to focus a little more. The ball of physics is really fun to do. It's something that they don't think is actually, they just think it's really fun, but it actually is. It's helping their brain be able to process that auditory information a little faster. It's helping integrate both sides of the brain, which helps a ton with schoolwork and things like that. So try out ball of physics.
Thank you, Marcy. Yes, Marcy is our expert on ball of physics. I'm still learning and practicing my 2 and 3 ball bounce, but we'll get there. Practice makes perfect, just like with pace. The more you do it, the better you will feel and the better you will get at it. So, thank you, Marcy. So, we just want to go back and say that as kids develop, they are learning how to manage their emotions and everything they're feeling on the inside. So, as an adult, you already know what sort of activities work for you and what makes you feel good on the inside. When you're in high gear, you know that maybe you need to go for a walk, listen to music. When you're in a lower gear, you know that maybe you need to go for a workout and maybe go do some jumping jacks or even take a shower before work. So we have all of these strategies that we've learned over time. And so kids need to learn their strategies too. We learned these strategies as we were growing and developing, but we just didn't know it. But now, once you're older, you can reflect on those and you are able to identify what works best for you. So, doing all these activities or some of the activities with your children can help them learn how to regulate for themselves. And that's called co regulation when you're there helping them figure that out for themselves. So we hope that you and your child find at least one of these activities helpful. Again, it's sort of a scavenger hunt and it depends on what your child needs. What works for one child may not work for another, like what works for Marcy might not work for me. So it's just about figuring out what works best for you and your child and going from there.
Thanks, Sarah. So rhythm and music can help to support and change the gears to be in that just right gear. So it can help to reestablish that connection to the environment. So the music can be played during transitions throughout the day to help get into that just right gear, or they can be played on a regular schedule just to promote self-regulation. When listening to the music, your child can be in that sensory space that you might have created based on our first week of sensory fitness. They can be in there playing with their other sensory items, listening to that music, kind of learning about the rhythm in their body, the rhythm in their environment, and helping them bring that gear into that just right place. So music can also be used instead of talking. So sometimes talking is just too much for that child. It's going to aggravate them even more. It's going to push them into that higher gear. So music is really good way to just help that gear get into the just right spot.
It's also important to remember that and pay attention to the sounds that are in our environment. We want to make sure that we're setting up an environment for success. And sometimes that there might be too much noise in the environment and sometimes there might not be enough. You may need to turn off the TV in the background when your child's trying to do homework or work on a project or really focus maybe on reading a book. That TV could be distracting to their regulatory system. So we'd want to turn that off. Or maybe there's not enough going on in the background and you might need like a white noise machine, or even those songs that Marcy talked about without the words in it could be helpful. So again, just playing with whatever works best for your child and what they need in that moment. And it might change day to day. It just depends on how they're feeling and how they're doing.
So going off of what Sarah said, you'll have to become a sensory detective to notice if music and rhythm is something that really works for your child and helps them regulate. So the things you might want to look for before or after you play the music to notice if it helped is, it has their movement slowed down, has their voice slowed down, are they able to interact or communicate more with you? Does their activity level change, or are they better able to follow directions? All of these things are signs that the music actually helped to regulate their sensory system. But this does not just apply to what we're talking about today. We need to be a sensory detective whenever we're using any type of sensory activity. So, like last week when we did the sensory bottles and the sensory tubes and things like that, you want to make sure you want to pay attention to what your child's doing before and after the activity to see if anything has changed. That way you'll know that that worked for your child, and it might work again, but it might not work the next time your child needs to get into that just right gear. So just be aware of that. Okay, so thank you for joining us for Sensory Fitness. We hope you learned a little bit more about rhythm and music and how it can be used as a support to help with regulation and bringing your gear into that just right place.
So we look forward to hearing how sound and rhythm worked for you guys on our next week's Sensory Fitness. We'll be back again at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, and we will give you guys some new tips and tricks to try and to see if those work for you and your child.
Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye.